So, let's talk about Charlemagne. This guy was a warrior king, a devout Christian who spread his faith with the sword, a brilliant reformer, and the man who would eventually be called the father of Europe. But who was he, really?
Okay, so picture this. It's the 8th century, about 300 years after the Roman Empire has collapsed. In Europe, it's a total mess. It's not a map of countries like we know them, but this chaotic puzzle of warring kingdoms. There's no single currency, no shared law, and for most people, no identity bigger than their own little village.
But out of all that chaos, one man is going to step up and forge an empire. Through decades of relentless war and some surprisingly brilliant administration, he didn't just conquer lands, he basically created the very idea of Europe.
So that's really what we're going to dig into here. How does a Frankish warlord end up with a nickname like Father of Europe? What did he actually do to earn a title like that?
Well, to really get who Charlemagne was, you've got to look at his family. This guy didn't just pop up out of nowhere. He was the product of generations of pure, ruthless ambition.
You see, for centuries the kings of the Franks, they were called the Merovingians, were basically just figureheads. People literally called them the do-nothing kings. The real power was held by an official called the mayor of the palace. And guess what? Charlemagne's grandpa, Charles Martel, yup, the Hammer, was the most powerful mayor of them all. He was the one actually running the show.
And, okay, this is the real game changer. Charlemagne's dad, Pepin, decides to go for it all. He goes straight to the Pope, gets his blessing to just kick out the last do-nothing king, and gets himself crowned instead. This is massive. It means Charlemagne doesn't just inherit a powerful kingdom, he inherits one that's now seen as handpicked by God. Talk about a perfect launchpad for an empire.
And boy, did he launch. Look, if there's one thing you need to know about Charlemagne, it's this. He was a warrior. His reign lasted 46 years, and it was pretty much one constant war after another. For him, war wasn't the last option, it was tool number one for building his empire.
And just look at the scale of his ambition. It's absolutely breathtaking. This wasn't about, just defending your borders. This was a systematic, multi-front expansion. He goes south, conquers the Lombards in Italy. He pushes into Spain to create a buffer zone. He goes east and completely demolishes the Heir Kingdom, grabbing their legendary treasure. And then he turns north to start his longest and by far his most brutal campaign.
32 years. Just let that sink in. An entire generation spent in this brutal, grinding war to conquer and convert the pagan Saxons. This wasn't just about grabbing land, it was a mission. He was going to impose his religion and his rule through sheer, unrelenting force. And don't think for a second we're reading between the lines here. He was crystal clear about his methods. This quote right here, it's not from some historian writing later. It's from one of his own royal decrees. For Charlemagne, expanding his empire and expanding Christianity were the exact same thing. And his main tool for converting people? The sword.
So all this fighting gives him this enormous territory, but his next move? His next move would give him something way more powerful. A title that nobody in Western Europe had held for over 300 years.
So, how in the world does a Frankish king become a Roman emperor? Well, it all starts with a crisis. In 799, the Pope, Leo III, gets attacked by his enemies in Rome and has to run for his life. And who does he run to? Charlemagne, of course, the most powerful man in Europe. So Charlemagne marches his army to Rome, puts the Pope right back on his throne, and thinks, hey, I'll stick around for Christmas. And then, on Christmas Day, in this incredible moment of political theater, the Pope suddenly places a crown on Charlemagne's head, and boom, the crowd proclaims him Emperor of the Romans.
This was an absolute masterstroke for both of them, a total win-win. Charlemagne gets this incredible boost in prestige. He's not just a Frankish king anymore, he's the successor to Caesar. And the Pope? Well, he just set a huge precedent, that the Church has the power to make emperors. This link between the throne and the altar, it's going to define European politics for the next 1,000 years.
Of course, there's just one tiny little problem. There already was a Roman emperor, ruling from Constantinople. The Byzantines saw themselves as the only true Roman Empire. So to them, Charlemagne wasn't some glorious restorer. He was just a barbarian who stole a title. This coronation wasn't a reunion, it was a rebellion. And even though they eventually and very grudgingly recognized him, this was basically the final political divorce between the Greek East and the Latin West.
Okay, so Charlemagne's built the hardware,
this massive empire he conquered. But now, how do you actually run the thing? This is where we see he's more than just a warlord. This is Charlemagne the state builder.
And he tackled it like a project manager. He knew he needed a few key things: a way to control his officials out in the provinces, a single set of laws, a stable economy to pay for everything, and, some kind of common culture to glue all these different people together.
So to keep tabs on his huge empire, he comes up with this genius idea, the Missi Dominici, which just means envoys of the Lord. Think of them as imperial inspectors. He'd send them out in pairs, a nobleman and a bishop, to travel the empire as his personal reps. They were basically his eyes and ears, there to stamp out corruption and make sure everyone was actually following his rules.
Now, this next one might seem kind of small, but trust me, it was absolutely revolutionary. It's called Carolingian Minuscule. See, before this, handwriting across Europe was a total disaster, different everywhere and almost impossible to read. By creating and enforcing this one clear, uniform script, Charlemagne basically built the 9th century version of an information superhighway. Suddenly, laws, orders, and books could be copied and read accurately everywhere. And get this, it was so good, it's the direct ancestor of the lowercase letters we're all using today.
He didn't stop there. He fixed the economy. He completely junked the old gold currency and created a brand new one based on pure silver. He standardized the coins and came up with an accounting system, pounds, shillings, and pence, that, no joke, would dominate Europe for 1,000 years. A stable currency meant trade could flourish, and he had a reliable way to tax people and fund his empire. He literally created the financial operating system for the entire Middle Ages.
But here's the thing, all these practical reforms, the inspectors, the handwriting, the money, they were all part of a much bigger vision. He gathered the smartest people of his time, like the scholar Alcuin of York, to his court. Their job? Copy ancient books, fix the education system, and standardize how the church did things. This Carolingian Renaissance wasn't just about a love of old books. Charlemagne got it. He knew that a more educated, more literate, and more culturally united Christian empire would be a stronger, more stable empire. So he builds this incredible machine, a fusion of military might, political genius, and cultural vision. But the big question is, could it survive without him? And that brings us to his final and maybe most complicated legacy. And the short answer is, nope. The empire was really held together by his force of will. As soon as he's gone, his grandsons start fighting and tear the whole thing apart. By 843, the Treaty of Verdun makes it official. The empire is split into 3 separate kingdoms. The dream of one single, unified Christian empire? It was over.
But wait, here's the great paradox of it all. The empire's failure was, in a weird way, its greatest success. Take another look at that map. West Francia? That's going to become France. East Francia? That's going to become Germany. The lines they drew on that map in 843 basically created the political and cultural heart of modern Europe.
So let's circle back to our big question. The actual physical empire he built with a sword, it fell apart in less than 30 years after he died. It was fragile. But the ideas he championed, the idea of a revived Rome, a common script, a standard economy, the very notion of a shared European identity, those things became the bedrock for the world that came next. So what was his real legacy? Was it the empire he built, or was it the idea of Europe that he left behind for everyone else to build on?